Support for Ahead of the Curve is brought to you by Manscaped, the best men's body grooming champions of the world. Manscaped just launched their 4th generation trimmer, the Lawnmower 4.0. You heard that right, the 4.0. Imagine shaving with a sleek, well-designed, and optimized trimmer that makes shaving time your favorite time in the bathroom. The craftsmanship and details of the 4.0 are next level. Manscaped engineered the ultimate body trimmer by focusing on intelligent functionality and an incredibly comfortable grooming experience. Their 4th generation trimmer features a cutting edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to their advanced skin safe technology. This upgraded trimmer includes a multifunction on and off switch that can engage a travel lock, and it also gives you the ability to turn on the 4000K LED spotlight on and off when needed for a more precise shave. The Lawnmower 4.0 even allows you to customize your trim through the additional guard lengths with sizes 1 through 4. Did I mention wireless charging? The new wireless charging system uses electromagnetic induction, which can help battery length last longer. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code CURVE20 at manscaped.com. JT, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Definitely. Well, I'm glad we got to set a date. I know you've had an extremely busy summer, and let me be one of the first, at least here, to say congratulations on you guys' national championship. And so you guys are very deserving. You guys are an awesome team to watch, and I know that it was a lot of fun. So I do want to know, like, tell us a little bit about that group. Like, that's going to be a group that goes down in history. But man, you're going to miss a ton of those girls, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, we only graduated one senior, Nicole Mendez. So everyone's coming back.
Awesome.
We got a really good freshman class coming in. The thing that stuck out about this team was how competitive they were, without a doubt, from the get-go of our fall practices. It was creating those competitive environments and let's just get after it. And that's kind of what COVID created, because usually, we have games in the fall where we'll play other D1s, some JUCO teams, like just the kind of standard fall. And what was different was we had enough, a big of a roster to put 2 legitimate teams together and play. And I mean, I think we had 14 inter squads over the course of the fall. I mean, it was just battles. It was different kind of battles, from low scoring games, high scoring games, mixing up the pitchers, mixing up the lineups, putting people in different positions and everything. But I mean, it was such a fun year. The group was great. Loved learning, loved getting better, and that competitiveness, I think, to me, is what separated them and what stood out the most.
Oh, I love that. I love hearing that. And so I wanted to really rewind back to our most recent thing, which was obviously the College World Series. And so I know that this got a lot of pub, and and so I want to hear your thoughts about it. So you guys are in Game 2 and Game 3, and you hadn't been doing as well as you had hoped. And so you see the entire team, or at least the entire offense, disappear into this closet, come back and score like 8 runs. So I don't know if it's like a special sauce that you guys have, or like the special Gatorade that Michael Jordan has them drink at halftime of Space Jam or whatever it was. But I like what caused that, or what did you guys talk about in that really spurred the next couple of innings, which you guys scored a bunch of runs?
Yeah, so every half inning, or I guess when we come back on defense or come back from defense, we always meet in front of the dugout, and this is every game, every inning, and sometimes it's talking about game plans, talking about adjustments, letting them talk. Sometimes it's just like hey, here we go. But what we did, and it did get a lot of pub, and it's kind of funny. It was so hot out there on the field that it was like, okay, let's go somewhere where we can cool off, because it was like 20 degrees cooler underneath the stadium in the dugout. And it was just the same message, but just letting them kind of cool off a little bit in that little locker room area. And one of the things that we put a lot of thought into. We were looking at Andrew Huberman podcast, a neuroscientist that has a lot of podcasts, does a lot of work in performance. And one of the things that we were trying to do was control body temperature. And what we basically, the easy way to think about it is, so body temperature goes up, your performance goes down. So there's ways that we were cooling the body during those games, and just trying to make sure that we were in the right state to be at like that peak performance level. So that's what I tell people. It wasn't really like a Hoosiers moment, or like that talk. It was just more of cooling the body down so we can focus on what we got to do, go out, and then let's just keep doing it.
And I don't want to derail that conversation, because I think that's really, really neat. But I do want to direct the guest to the Huberman Lab podcast, just because literally maybe one of my favorite ones that I listen to. And there's some in there that
game changing, so good.
Really, really good. And so I think I've actually sent it to a couple of friends of mine in the last couple of weeks, like the balance one, the one with skills acquisition, and just it's anything. So I do want to direct them to that. But let's circle back to, so you've got between innings game plans and adjustments. So you meet with them every half inning, or however you do it. A couple of things that I have, it's like, okay, I want to do more of that, but I always felt like, number one, the guy that's about to hit, I don't want to, or girl in your case, I don't want them to like lose out on getting ready on deck, or getting to see something and getting ready, like rushing to home plate. And then the second thing is how do we make those small adjustments without like overwhelming them, or like saying, does that make sense at all? Because it's like, you want to make those small adjustments. What's the best way that you guys have found to do it?
Right. So when they come in, kind of the setup is the person who's going to hit, the person on deck will go in and get their stuff and come out. So they're getting their stuff and they're coming out while we're talking with the rest of the team. So you sometimes can miss it because, basically the person who's in the hole, and then everyone else beyond that is going to be hearing the message. So what we'll do is sometimes get them to come out and just like, hey, hear this real quick, or we'll talk, say what we got to say, and then kind of condense that message for the person hitting and the person on deck. So sometimes we try and make it as simple, as easy as possible. Because like you said, we don't want to overwhelm anything, or we don't want to overwhelm anyone. And so for me, what the biggest thing was, we got to practice that. We have to practice in the fall. We have to practice in just inter squads. How do you know, identifying what you're seeing, identifying the issue, and then fixing it. And then how are you going to fix it? And how you're going to fix it is going to be individual. I guess it's going to be different for the individual. So like, for example, if somebody is struggling with drop balls, let's say someone's throwing drop balls for a strike. Let's say we went in the game and somebody wasn't throwing drop balls for a strike. Now here they come and they're just pounding that with a little bit of downspin. So, what the message could be is, hey, you can set your posture up. You can widen out. You need to get under the ball. We try and keep the cues like external as much as we can, just because I feel like if you're focusing on internal cues, like, hey, my hands need to be this, and you're doing that while the pitch is coming, it's not gonna. We don't find like a lot of success. So if there's stuff that we can do in our setup, or if there's stuff that we can do, maybe it's positioning in the box, or your stance, or some different things like that, then all you got to do is think hit. And so we practice it though, and the identifying of what your adjustment needs to be is something that we work on all the time, because it's sometimes I think it's subjective. It's really not up to me. It has to be up to the person who's hitting, because at the end of the day, that's what I tell our hitters all the time is they're in the box hitting, I'm not. So if it needs to make sense to them, and I need to be able to explain it in a way that makes sense to them. But a lot of times they're giving me the feedback that I can just, I feel like my role is more of a caddy to them. So
Yeah, I like that.
helping them through that process and not make it my thing, make it more of their thing.
Cool. No, I really like that. And I really like that you also mentioned, hey, we train this in the fall. So then all it takes is when we get back to the spring, all we're doing is giving subtle reminders. And so this is one of the things that I really am trying to do a better job of. Number one is training it during the fall and like mimicking the different types of pitches we're going to see, and even like game planning and having practice game plans around that and saying, hey, I don't know for your instance, the different pitches that you see, but like, hey, this guy's got some sink on his fastball, so we're going to look here. Here's the tendency here, whatever it may be. But that way, once we get into the spring, it's like, okay, hey, I've been here before, and this is the adjustment that I made. And you talk about like a caddy. I really like that. So the other question that I have too is getting players to talk more about what they're seeing in the box. So let's say we've got this game plan formulated, and sometimes it's just like give it time to work and let's get on time and let's go to work. But sometimes it's like it may be different than what the players are actually noticing in the box. Do you give them opportunities to talk and share, and what do those look like?
Yeah, 100%. I try and encourage that as much as I can, because you'll have people who can relate a message a lot easier than I can sometimes. And we've had it to where people in the past can, just by a look, they can look at someone and then that person's like, oh, she's not throwing as hard today, or something like that. But that piece is so important, because I think it gives accountability, or it gives it almost makes the player like an investor in the game, right? And my thing is, like I said kind of before, is I'm not the one playing. The players are the ones playing the game. So if they have some investment in that game, they're going to feel like they're on top of it, that they want it to be good. They want it to put more effort into that. So it is, and with our team being as competitive as they are, we try and get that like culture going, and we do a lot of that in the fall, competing and whatnot. So now when you take that mindset and then you add some in-game pieces to it, and when they know what they're looking at, they know how to explain. And that's a big thing that we do a lot of too, is explaining what pitches are like. So looking at tilt, looking at spin rates, what do different spin rates of pitches do? So we do a lot of that kind of information in the fall, of understanding what different pitches look like, what different speeds look like, where break points will be. So they get like a pitcher's perspective on what pitches do. So then they can be as descriptive as they can with what they're seeing, or at least be on the same page with what they're seeing and talking about in the dugout.
Oh, really good. And I think, the best teams that I ever played on and the best ones that I ever coached were the ones that we didn't really have to communicate a ton. We just had to get them back, be like bumpers almost. And so I really like that. And I love that you guys are outlining all of this stuff in the fall, which we'll get into here pretty soon. But I did want to rewind back to the World Series again. It's fresh on our minds, and I've got some specific questions that I want to know. So you guys are in elimination games literally the entire time you're there, and you guys had an awesome regular season. You go in and you lose game one, and now your backs are against the wall twice, right? And so I want to know what's your thought process in, and what was, I guess, the whole coaching staff and a team's thought process, excuse me, behind what do we do now? Like, what did you decide to do that was successful for you guys? Because I think, there's some coaches that would freak out. There's some that are like, hey, we need to just keep doing what we're doing. And you guys were so successful in that, because once you lost, then it was like, then we're not going to lose again. And you mentioned the competitive nature that your girls had, which I'm sure that played a big part of it. But what did you decide to do, not do? What was the messaging like? Just kind of walk us through how that environment, because I'm sure you were very disappointed, but at the same time, we're still going to go win this thing.
Right. So that was the big thing. Going into the tournament, the thing that was a lot different is the capacity was going to be a lot larger. Right. So especially in this past year, we didn't really play with a lot of fans in the stands. We went from limited capacity in UTEP to no fans in the stands, or I guess it was, I think ASU was 25. I mean, there was very little, like there was basically no one there. And then towards the end of the season, Oklahoma State was full capacity. That was, I would imagine, close to 1,000. And it got rowdy, and it was on you quick, like the noise and everything. So I say all that because the thing that we talked about was failure does not exist. And there was a Kobe Bryant interview that he did with Jameel Hill, I think it was a while ago. But some of those cliches like that, but we really bought into that, was that, if you fail at something, it's only a failure if you don't learn from it. So that was our big thing, was, how do you learn from these different things? So now I bring up the stadium capacity, because when you go in, when you go into a game, it's the same game that you're playing, win or lose. It's 7 innings, 21 outs. You hit, you pitch. It's all the same. Literally, you're playing the same exact game. The only thing that changes is your environment, right? So we talked a lot about what are the things that are going to influence your game mentally, physically, technically, like all these different, like what are the different things that can get into here. And that was what we found, was a lot of it is all mental. So when we go into that game one, it's loud, it's crazy. And same thing with Oklahoma State. Went into that game one, it was loud, it was crazy. And we kind of got caught up in that. And it's one of those things where it's like, you can only talk about it so much, because as soon as you feel it, it's just going to be different. So that game one, it was different. And credit Odyssey Alexander and JMU, they were not fazed by anything. They just came out and they were throwing punches, and we just weren't ready for that. And so, we lose that game one, you go into that game two, or sorry, that day two, which we have a day off. And it was just a kind of like a good reset for us, of just like, hey, double elimination tournament, exactly who's going to be in front of you, because the format of it is, if you lose, you stay on your side of the bracket. If you win a game, and then if you win your first game and then lose, you'll flip to the other side of the bracket. So we knew, okay, Georgia's in front of us, and then we're going to have the loser from the Friday night game. So I say that because we were breaking down like opponents, and like, look, here's a path. You know that you're going to have to beat JMU twice to get in a championship game. Take this one game at a time, right? One pitch, one game at a time. So it was a good reset, a good understanding of, okay, we know what this feels like now. Now we can just go out and play. Let's do what we've been doing. So, you get through. It was the Georgia, and then UCLA was a great game for us. Then we knew we had to play JMU twice, beat them twice to get in. So it was, hey, JMU now turns into a 3-game series. You lose the first game, now you have 2 games. It's a series. Let's win the series. So now once we get done with that, it was okay. Now we have a completely new tournament. Basically, we have another 3-game series Florida State, and it was the same exact thing. We lose. They came out they got after us. Really, they did a really good job. And it was one of those things where we just couldn't catch up. We just couldn't get things falling. Just, I wouldn't say that the crowd or anything got to us. It was just a little bit different, right? So lose that first game, and then going into game 2, it was like, hey, 3-game series again. Let's play.
I love hearing that, and I love the thought process behind it, because they've been in 3-game series before. Like that's a typical thing, and that's you can talk about elimination games and do the fear tactic of, hey, if we lose, we're going home, or you can take a step back and go, hey, we've been here before. This is just another 3-game series that we've been in all season long. And so I love that. I love the Kobe quote. Failure is not a thing. And I think I've seen that going on social media before, which I think is really, really good, because I think for me, if we can get players to play fearless without fear of just what's going to happen, it just frees them up so much. And I wish that I felt like that on a daily basis. Like I went through life fearless almost. And so I just freeing them up just by talking them down. I'm sure they were really disappointed. I'm sure they were really pissed. But giving them and that perspective in that moment from you guys, I think was a huge deal. Like that's coming from the outside in, but obviously it made a huge difference.
Yeah, it's and the big thing is we wanted to just play, and I think that is a big thing that is lost in a lot of this is just the word play. And you have in the youth level, you have just a ton of things, whether it's showcases or you want to get recruited or you want to get this. So the playing aspect is kind of has gotten lost over the years. Whereas when you talk to the legends, at least in softball, it was we played. They can remember those battles that they played in travel ball, in college, at the Olympics. They were just playing at a very high level, but just letting them play the game, and just anything that entails with that, and just keep the fluff out of it. And I think that's what's kind of hard too, is sometimes there's a lot of fluff with social media, with media, just like TV in general, of if you guys win and the record. We never talked about any stats, any records, because to us it was just fluff. We wanted just to play and win, and anything that helped us on that road, we latched onto. If it didn't help us, we didn't like talking about it.
I love that. So let's go back and let's talk about what you guys are. We can talk about last fall or what you're going to do this fall, and hopefully it will be without any COVID restrictions, and we have back to regular fall. But I just want to know, like, let's say you get all of these girls on campus in August or early September, whenever you guys can start practicing. You've mentioned that your training in the fall sets you up for what you guys are doing in the spring. So just kind of walk through an outline of what you all are doing, and what you're training, what you decide that you need, and what's really important to you.
Yeah. So I think the COVID year for us changed it changed us as coaches, and
Okay.
It was in a good way. And it gave us some time in the summer for, like, after the season was canceled, going in the summer, really got to sit down and evaluate like our practices, and not like actual practice, but more of like for me personally, is what I'm doing as a coach good enough? And so that was one of the things that I know that we identified was we need to be very clear and direct on everything. We can't assume anything. So, like, what that looks like for me is, okay, runner at third, less than 2 outs. What's the job here? And if I were just to assume, like for us, it'd be like, score the run. I can get a ground ball up the middle. I don't even have to get a hit to score this run, right? But we can't assume that anyone knows that. So for us, it was you're gonna hear a lot of the word identify, but just like
No, I love it.
Like literally go over everything, and not in a way that is gonna be like super advanced or super tech or like hard to understand. It's just like, okay, hey, look, here's what's happening. Here's the situation. Let's do this. This is this pitch. How are you going to do it? So for me, I would make it the thing of like a broad sense of, as a hitter, you want to be able to hit everything. You want 0 holes. You should be able to hit to left field, center field, right field. You should be able to hit in, out, up, down, curve, screws, rise, drops. You should be able to hit 50 all the way to 75. Actually, we would say like 45 all the way to 75. And that, if you give a broad sense of that and say like you want to be able to do everything, then everyone's going to have kind of what their different challenges are, right? So first thing we do in the fall is we test them. We do our on-base use screenings, which for me have been a total game changer and really changed the way that I look at hitting, in the sense of, if I'm a hitting coach and I'm expecting you to be able to do this and you physically can't do that, then what's my message to you? Like if someone told me, hey, I need you to go dunk, and I'm like, I can't do that. And then that person would get mad at me for not being able to dunk. I'm like, well, I can't dunk. I just physically can't dunk. So in the way of when it comes to hitting, if you physically can't do something, then I need to find a way to be able to help you get past that. So that was the one thing I learned from that whole process, was the physical side of hitting, and just understanding how one little physical thing can accelerate a flaw, or if someone can get beat inside, or whatever the thing is. So we do a lot of testing in the fall, see what they can, see what they can do, see what they're limited with, body wise, the way they move, and we'll do some K motion swings just to see that, and then we'll test them on different speeds and different pitches. So now within the first 2 weeks, we have a pretty good idea of where people are at when they come in. And it's just like, hey, I'm coming off surgery. Someone might say, hey, I'm coming off an injury, whatever. So it's less, hey, let's get less swings and more strength work in this area. Let's get you moving right before we just throw you in and start, swinging. Some people might be like, hey, I took a lot of time off. I played in a league or did a ton of stuff. So like light effort swings that can still create some good movement patterns and still get them to do it without putting a lot of stress on them. So we'll use some tennis ball work with the half bats, which I found to be awesome. Love that tool. But yeah, so just figuring out where they are as a hitter, and then everyone's going to be a little bit different. But what we found is that you can kind of group people in different scenarios. So here's everyone who has limited hip mobility. Here's people who have limited ankle mobility. Now you can kind of set some workouts or set some things that can help them with that. But it's okay. How are we going to progress you as an individual player throughout the entire fall? So now when you get to the middle of the fall, the way that, we've practiced with individuals and team practice and all that, it's okay, where are you at now here? So we'll do the same test in the middle of the fall just to kind of see where they're at. And what we see a lot of times is, that we'll do the tests and everything, and then all those, they're able to pass, all those tests just because they're able to move again. And now once we get to the end of the fall, you're starting to see Exit velos go up. You're starting to see performance against different like now their holes are like starting to become strengths, right? So they now the big thing is the mental game in the fall, and I think the tactical piece in the fall. And I think those are the two that are the least represented in our game now. I don't know, like, I haven't been in baseball in a while, but I know in softball you see a lot of like on Twitter, you'll see a lot of swing mechanics, which, don't get me wrong, I think it's very important. The way you move, the way that you hit, the way that you're getting the bat through the zone, all those concepts are great, but they're not everything. And I think in the physical part, workouts, I can get faster, I can lift weights, I can get stronger, right? Those are the two that you can put out there the most and get feedback on. But I think the tactical piece and the mental piece of softball is, again, so underrepresented. And I think it's because it's subjective. You can't, like, I can't say, okay, hey, let's do a confidence level right now. Let's see where you're at 70%. I'm looking at an app. You're at 70% confidence level today, right? It's up to the individual. It's up to that person. And we try and give them some perspective in the fall. We try and get them to compete, to learn how to manage failure, learn how to breathe. Like, breath work is a big thing that we got into as well. And that was, again, from, Huberman podcasts and everything. But those two pieces, we work on those more towards the middle to the end. Whereas the technical and physical piece will always start with, and it kind of morphs a little bit over time with what it is that we're working on. If that kind of makes sense.
Oh, I love that, and I love you're spacing it out essentially to, okay, we're the furthest away from competition, so that we have some time to be able to make physical changes, if so. But I do want to go back to the screen, because you see a lot of this on social media too, with On Base U and TPI and some other different screens. But I want to know, personally, was there anything that really stood out, or was there something that you were asking a player to do specifically, and you don't have to name the player, but you were asking X player to do this, and then you learned later, or you saw on their screen that they literally they couldn't do it, so you were able to either start working on that or find a workaround, because I know that happens quite frequently with just setting people up better. Like, we don't have to fix their mobility. Some of that is innate, I think. And that's where I think some coaches are, we can get that wrong, because we go, hey, we can fix this, but it may take, a year of really doing this, or we can just set them up a little bit differently. But I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. So that is what was so great about, the On Base U screens and the K-Vest, is it gave me accountability. And I think as coaches, we need to keep ourselves accountable and not just throw a drill or throw things at different people, and just holistically look at, like, hey, what's going on. So one of the coolest things that I saw was, we did the K motion when we first did it in 2020. So this was like the spring of 20. We did it off front toss, right? So it's front toss, boom, 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 easy, okay? And then, so I thought that was the easiest way to kind of manage that, was, okay, we'll just go easy front toss. So
Mm-hmm.
and again in the fall, and like this fall of 20, so this past fall, we did it, and it was, everyone was, without any instruction, without anything, just easy front toss. It was 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Everyone's like going through their perfect sequence, right? They're crushing the ball. I'm like, okay, sweet, right. What are you gonna say? You're doing really good. So then it was, hey, let's see what this looks like on live. And we put them in a live setting, and it was interesting because the very first person we saw was the pitcher on our team who threw the highest velocity. She was 68, hitting 70 at that point. Like, she was throwing gas, and our hitters were just flat out were not ready for that. So we put two hitters, because we have a basically one K motion like setup. So it was one person hit while the other person's off, and then we'll switch them.
Sure.
So while they're in there, what we saw was now their swing patterns were 2, 3, 4, 1. So it was torso, shoulders, bat, hips. I was like, what the heck is going on right now? And so what was happening was they were compensating because of the speed, right? It wasn't anything that had to do with, physically or whatever. It was okay, the speed is so fast and they're so not ready for it that they're trying to get their bat caught up with their upper body with their hands. So now, instead of me saying, hey, we need to, your load is this, your bat's doing, it was, hey, let's just start a lot earlier. Treat this as like it's 80, because right now this is just blowing you up. And then you started to see a lot better, a lot better movement patterns, start to see better sequences or more normal swings based on that. So we saw a lot of compensating moves of, you'd see like kind of like this move with your shoulders or with your bat first. But I saw a lot of squatting patterns that were very limited. And so we did a 14-day like mobility challenge where we really worked on a squatting pattern and kind of getting the body able to move like that. So we see a lot of low back issues at least in a general female athlete population. And I don't know this, I'm not exactly on the science behind it, but it was with at least what worked with our players was they were staying in like an anterior pelvic tilt for most of the day. Like, not just outside of softball, they were staying like that, like in everything. So doing like having a posterior move, like getting them kind of back to center and talking about their posture was a challenge for them. So we were working a lot of posture, a lot of squatting patterns, and just saying like, look, when you do a squat, it shouldn't hurt you. When you hit, it shouldn't hurt you. Like, these are just natural, like athletic movements. Let's try and make it to where we're moving in the right direction and you have a good setup, and then I can just move. I can move free. And so once we kind of worked on those issues, you started to see a lot of people, holding their posture a little bit longer, getting in good positions on their load. You start to see, instead of like kind of loading like on their quad and getting their positioning over their toes, you started to see people kind of sit a little bit better, and they were just more balanced in the box. But those were kind of the things that were unique to us. I don't know how much of that is unique to the entire female athlete population. I don't even know if like the male population, how much, what that looks like. But there were some things that we could fix on the setup side, because I feel like those moves, the squatting pattern, a rotary like swing pattern, are natural. And you should be, as an athlete, you should be able to do those without having to compensate from other areas, because it's not like, they're all able to bench 300 pounds and they're able to make up for it with that upper body strength. So just getting them into those patterns was huge for us, and they felt like it was able to free them up to swing.
I love that. I love hearing that too, just because it's not unique to your pop. I think that a lot of, and this is just a theory that I have of mine too, we see that a lot, the anterior pelvic tilt. So we're thinking of like, if you could see it on video, they're tilting their hips like forward, for those who are unfamiliar with the term. And so I think that that's because they're sitting in a desk all day long, and they're just sitting in that for basically 10 hours of the day or 8 hours of the day, whatever it is. And then if we don't try and work them out of that, then that's just going to become their compensating pattern to be able to do that. And this is why, I don't know how many teams do it, but you'll see a lot of the Dodgers players, they'll try and get their hips underneath them and do like the pelvic tuck. So you'll see them either on deck or like step out, and they're trying to get their spine to line up with their pelvis. So they'll consciously tuck their pelvis underneath their shoulders.
If you go on YouTube or however and watch some of our past games, Lindsay Elam would get set up. She would get her stance, and then you'd see her pelvis just go whoop, right, just right underneath, and that clicked for a lot of them. But I know for her, she was like I'm going to do this between every at bat or between every time that she stepped in, and it helped a ton for her. She loved it, and just letting her kind of stay in that position. So I'm going to have her watch Dodger games and have them look to see if she can see it. I'll tell her she started that.
Yeah, she started the trend. That's great. No, I love that. And so you start with the physical piece. And again, thank you for going into some detail with what you guys are seeing, just because, we see the sound bites and the short snapshots on social media, but what does it look like in person? And so again, thank you for that. But then I agree with you with the tactical side of things. I think for the most part, this is maybe the smartest generation we've ever had, maybe the most physical generation that we've ever had. But I do think that they are missing some of that tactical piece, just because the focus has been on other things, physically developing the swing. We have a ton more video than we used to have. You've got a ton of, and you even alluded to it earlier, we have so many different things that can measure things. And so understanding the tactical piece and the mental side for this generation is, I think that's kind of the competitive advantage. And so I'd love to hear more. You talked about breath work, managing failure. A lot of the girls that you're getting on campus were, top 5-10 players in the country, and really hadn't dealt with a lot of that. So if you don't mind, just what are some strategies that you use for the mental game from the tactical side that we can steal from you? Because I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. And that kind of, like I said earlier, that mental piece is so subjective, and everyone's is going to be different. And, people are going to use life experiences or perspectives that they gain from their parents or their upbringing, or whatever the case is, they're going to bring that into the game. So it's just really understanding that there is no bad things that happen from a fail in a game, in the sense of, hey, failure doesn't exist, right? And that was like early on, like, hey, failure doesn't exist. So now Jocelyn Allo can go and maybe strike out her first at bat, but it doesn't do anything to her for the rest of the at bats. And it was just understanding like the mental piece of how one bad at bat can snowball into 4 bad at bats. And, you hear the cliche of, they had, how many times you hear like the 3, they went 0 for 3, and then their 4th at bat, they had a game winning hit, right? So our thing was, let's not even kind of defining like, hey, what success is, but also understanding too, like, we're not going to wait for the 0 for 3 just to be like, now I'm in a big moment, I'm going to step up. It's mentally, are you going to be able to stay in with first at bat, second at bat, third at bat, fourth at bat, like all of them. So it's understanding like what you can control, what you cannot control. And we talk about the things that we can control is our effort, our attitude, all those things that you heard in like, Pee-wee sports, right? Your effort, your attitude, what pitches you swing at, how hard you swing at it. So we try and just control those. And, the way that we talk about it is, if I go out and I go 0 for 4, but I have 4 like shots, 4 líneas into the outfield, right? And they're right at people, but they are hard hit. Exit velocity is way up. But now I get into a situation where I'm let's say 3 for 4, and they're all like little like duck farts, right? Just right over the infield bleeders as a righty hitter, right? It got jammed, boom, they go down. And it's like, which ones do you prefer? Now, from a performance standpoint, you'd be like, yeah, I want the 3 for 4. You're on base for three times. You're helping your team, whatever. Whereas the other one is like, hey, you weren't on base, but you hit the ball hard. So for us, all of it is a success. None of it's a failure, because if you go 0 for 4 with 4 shots, hit the ball hard. You can't really control, what happens after you hit the ball. Defense is going to, play defense. Whereas the other one is like, hey, you didn't hit the ball hard, but you still found a way to get on base. It happens like that. It's great. So we try and celebrate as many things as that we can. And then it's just understanding, like, if you're staying on that path and you have all these things to celebrate, now you don't have to be down about an out. And also, if you do get an out with something that you didn't get, how are you going to fix it? What is it that you saw? Is it on you? Is it, hey, I felt I was a little anxious in the box. My heart rate was up. It was my body, I wasn't ready. My timing was off, whatever the case is, or they pitched out of the plan, or, whatever that case is. It's how are you going to fix it for the next piece? And you have 9 batters or I guess 8 batters in between to figure out what is it that you're going to do to fix that. And not even fix it, but just how are you going to perform and beat them on this next at bat? So from the mental side, it's just all about keeping that game atmosphere like ready, and just you never leave it. You stay in that game piece, because the game is going to dictate what it is that you're doing. Meaning, like, sometimes you are going to go 0 for, sometimes you are going to go 4 for 4. But what does the game need? What is the game asking or giving you at that point? Sometimes a walk, sometimes a hit by pitch. You just gotta take what it is that you're being given at that time. And at least that's what we bought into and worked on kind of in the fall.
Sure. No, that's really, really good. So, you mentioned earlier, and you've mentioned this a couple of different times, especially with the timing piece. So, during a game, I mean, there may be some small mechanical adjustments, like you mentioned, with setting up to be able to hit certain pitches. But also, it's like that tactical side is the quickest, easiest fix, because mechanics wise, I mean, it's just, you may have little bitty tweaks, but at the same time, if you're thinking about what my body's doing in the box while the pitch is coming in, it's going to be really hard to hit it. And you also mentioned that timing was a huge deal in the fall after you got the K motion sensors on the players, and then they were late, and so it threw everything else off. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on the timing piece, because watching you guys play, it just seemed like it didn't matter what, if the pitcher was throwing 75, you mentioned, or 45, you mentioned, they did a really good job with just owning timing windows. Like, that was one thing that was like, okay, they are starting really early, and they are moving really well to the ball. And so just whatever you can, I'd love to hear how you train that, your thought processes, your cues, or whatever you guys are doing, because for me, it's one of the biggest reasons why you guys were able to do what you did. You have really talented players, but you guys seriously owned a lot of timing windows against some really, really good pitchers.
Yeah. So first with that, I got to give it up to the godfather of timing, Perry Husband. He's awesome. And he has really helped me kind of understand timing with all the work that he's done. I think it was like early 2000s, and just kind of, I pick his brain a ton, and he's great. And just with everything with EV and just, differentials and speed and what that looks like has really kind of helped our understanding of what timing is. So, you kind of go back to what it is that, as a hitter, that you need to be prepared for. So for us, it's you got to be prepared for anything and everything. And it's, with the timing piece, it's, can you feel what different pitches look like and feel like. And so for us, it's all about, can you feel timing? Can you feel what that's like? So, if EV wise, if a pitch seems faster and someone's throwing 70 and they're throwing you in, do you know how to make it feel like 80? Can you feel what 80 is like? And so for us, we literally practice hitting 80 miles an hour. And it's a tough environment because it's boom, it's on you. But it's like, hey, let's figure it out. Let's try and get it. And so one of the coolest things was when we set that up, we had a hitter who thought of themselves to be a ground ball hitter. And they were just like, I'm going to put the ball in play and be like, use my speed and, be more of that type of person. Sorry about that. So then when we set that machine up, it was like, hey, just let's see what you got. She was starting to kind of self-regulate and kind of do some moves. It was like, hey, here it is. And she was getting her timing down and feeling what that was like. And when she stepped in, and this is off the machine on the field, she hit an absolute nuke. And it was just crazy. I was like, oh my gosh. Like, it was off 80.
Love it.
And it was like, okay, now look, if you can feel comfortable with that, now imagine when you need to tap into that, what that feels like now. So sometimes your body is going to dictate what it feels like. If I'm feeling sluggish on a certain day and I step into the box and 65 is blowing me up, then you know what? If I am trying to feel 65, maybe I need to dial it up a little bit to be like, hey, I'm going to feel what 75 is like. And then you can kind of keep making adjustments. So for us, it was exposing them to those different speeds and knowing how to hit as big of a spread as you need to. And it's like, if you can hit within like just a simple 10 miles an hour and just get like a good exit speed, then we'll feel pretty good. But that's all credit to Perry and kind of the work that we've done with him since 2016, I think. I started reading his books when I was like a GA in 12 and 13, but really kind of got to dive into it when I was on staff. So it was it's as big of a training environment piece of exposing him to those different things and then just letting him like apply that to in-game situations.
I really like that. And I think that the take-home piece for me too, because you hear, hey, we want to set up an environment that's tough, but you also are like, hey, here's the reflection piece of this is 80, this is what it feels like. So understand what that's like, because you may not, if you're setting up a training environment, you may see it tomorrow or you may see it next week, but we need to make sure that we are getting back on track to what that feels like quicker. And feel is such a huge thing. And I know we were talking earlier just about players being able to communicate that, because again, it's going to feel different in the box. And once you guys are setting that up in the fall, then it's like, okay, now what is it? Is it what we thought? Is it not? And how does this fastball feel, or how does this, whatever pitch that they're throwing feel? And that way it may be a little different for each hitter, but it's no longer, hey, they're throwing 92. Okay, but like, what does that 92 feel like? It may be super high spin, but they may be releasing it really close to the rubber, and it may feel like 88 or whatever it is.
Right.
So that's a huge thing.
Yeah, and that's talking about terms too. When we say, hey, she's throwing hard. When I was in junior college, I wasn't like the best ever. I wasn't really like not even close. So if I would get back from a bat and say, hey, he's throwing hard, they might be like, dude, this is 85. What are you talking about? This isn't hard. I'm like, it's coming, but so I think just knowing like those terms. So it got kind of cool where kind of towards beginning, middle of the season, you start to hear, hey, it's like 67. So now they start to like pinpoint like speed. It's like 67. It's not quite 65. It's not quite 70. It's, 67, 68. But once you get like those exacts, now you know what that is. So the way that I approach that is going to be different than what somebody else might. Is instead of like broad general terms like slow, fast, loopy. Some of those terms that for us are a little bit different or could mean different things.
Sure. No, and again, it is subjective, but it's also we've trained this, and they are getting to the point where they know each other, so they know what each other's cues may be, which is a really neat thing too. And well, I don't know if you I don't know if you deal with this, but like the last week of the season in regionals, we saw 59 miles an hour top out fastball, which is, in baseball terms at high school level, really, really slow.
Really
And then we
slow.
turn around the next week and we see 95. So it's like we have to be able to cover that spread. And so the 59 was getting us out and the 95 was getting us out. And, you hear with the slower pitchers, it's like, oh, they're throwing too slow. And then with the kid that was like 92, 93, touch 95, it's like, oh, is he throwing too fast? Like, so just being able to adjust to that too. But it's such, you guys have the same thing with that huge spread, because you may see changeups at 45 and fastballs at 75. And so what is that? How are you able to cover that amount of time and space and location? Like I know you've mentioned the training environment too, and swing mechanics play into that, and seeing it often plays into that too. But I just that's a really tough thing to teach.
First of all, 59 and 95 in baseball is sick. That would piss me off.
Yeah, it was something.
Geez.
And yeah.
No, but I think just with that, it's kind of understanding like what are you seeing on that particular day. So if somebody is throwing 50, 45, 50, like what are you going to do to hit that? Someone's throwing 75, basically just adjusting for what that is. You don't see it a ton where somebody has like a 30-mile-an-hour spreads, like a 70 to 40. You might see 15, 10 to 15, 15, 20. So I'm trying to think. I think 70 to 55. So that's 15, right? Yeah, 15. Right. And so it's knowing like what does that feel like? Can you identify out of the hand when that other pitch is coming, and is your body set up to hit it? Some people can, some people can't, and it's not like we just give up on that. And like a lot of stuff that we'll do is we'll do like a hit and run. We'll do a hit and run drill where it's you're setting up for 75, you're going to swing the bat. And based on the different speed, are you still able to hit it? The big thing is trying to stay in as good a position as you can and gear your timing up. And if you just see or feel something different, then, you can do it. And we had a former player, Fale of You, was really, really good at feeling changeups. She just could, and that's kind of goes to like I think it's game sense, and that occlusion training was if they're picking stuff up, in the pre-release where it's with the glove or something that's tipping and they can feel that, then they're like sitting on it and making that adjustment like mid pitch, which is crazy. But it's all about feel, and are you able to cover that? If you can, awesome. If you are having a hard time or your exit velocity is not going to go up on that changeup, if you're sitting that, then you don't have to sit on it. So, or at least cover that. So it's just I feel like if you feel it, or at least with our hitters, if they feel it, they can see it a lot better and they can make better decisions rather than just trying to like sit fastball, adjust change. The feel of it is I think works for them best.
Sure. No, 100%. So with that, I know that one of the things that a lot of programs are trying to do now is to use the environment to train that stuff. But you run into a couple of issues with that. So you've got machines that can train velo, but you don't necessarily see arm action, torso, or tipping, or any sort of like movement with hands, right? So they have to learn to time the machine, which is a little bit different than what they're going to see in a game, just because the spin is different and there's no arm action. You've got BP throwers who, are like us, who their arm is going to fall off if they throw, too much. But you can replicate it a little bit better. I would like to know just the balance of how much you guys do machine work, how much you guys try and do live, and maybe with softball, I know the underhand motion, you could do it a little bit more than like seeing live off of a pitcher every day that's throwing overhand. But I would just love, how do you guys balance that? Because with pitch recognition, it's one thing to feel off of a machine, but the seams aren't there, and you can't really time arm action. But with arm action, you're not going to be throwing 90 from 60 feet 6 inches every single day either, or whatever that means in the softball world. You're the expert at that. But I'd love to hear how you guys balance really just the live arm and the machine, and then regular BP, just things like that. Just because it seems to come up quite frequently.
Yeah, so we kind of vary up our the releases, and I think a lot of it too is like the pitching motion, how long that takes. And I think what's unique in baseball is when you're going from the stretch, you can vary how long your your time to the plate. And you're starting to see it a little bit more where guys are varying their time to the plate when they're coming out of the windup, and it's, Cueto's little wiggle, or, some things like that. So what we try and do is just understand, okay, timing wise is just an easy general way is where is your trigger at in relation to where the pitch is. And so, for a lot of them, it's where is your hip at in relation to where the ball is. So if the ball is getting on you and you still haven't made your move, you're going to get blown up. Are you ready to make your move to fire when you need to, or when you want? So we talk about, the process of your swing, from the time that you lift up or make your first move to the time that you actually hit it. You got to understand how, you got to know yourself how long that takes. And so what we'll do sometimes is, we train a lot of machines, because that is to me, I feel like that's the best way to get a feel for what the actual velocity of the pitch is going to be. And, sometimes spin rates might be off or too unrealistic, but I think the velocity of the pitch matters a ton and what that feels like. So what we'll do sometimes is we'll take a tarp, and we'll just like a little banner, like just something that was hanging outside, and we'll put it over the netting that is in front of the machine. So what it looks like is you see me put the ball up, and then it disappears, and then you just see it coming out of the machine. So what you got to know is trust your swing, trust your movements, trust your timing, and just know you're presetting it and kind of what it is that you're trying to hit, and then going from there. So now if you can feel that timing or trust your movements without seeing, for us, the motion, or seeing that, you can just trust it, knowing that the ball, and it kind of freaks you out a little bit because you see it's behind the tarp and it's coming out of the machine. Mm-hmm. So, you don't see it. So it's, can you trust that? So now, once you're off the machine, you're seeing this. We'll sometimes have it where they go up, down, and then put it in. So we'll kind of vary that. But then also too, we try and see live as much as we can too, because I think that while training the speeds is important and feeling that, it is also important that you train as much game-like experience that you can. So now, we'll throw some, I'll throw easy BP. We had usually have a coach who can do that. Aaron Arvala, who was our volunteer coach, did a great job with throwing BP for us. And this is a real live pitcher sometimes. So that's we awesome. Would have people set up where we have certain situations, and it's a 2-2 count, and she's throwing behind the net, and she's throwing live. So in the equivalent, it'd be like a coach throwing 80 from a mound in front of, for baseball, like a BP setup, but he's like lifting up and then bringing it, right, or throwing curves, or whatever it is. But she did a really good
That's
job with
awesome.
helping us with that. Um, and I just, there's nothing that's going to replace live at bats. And we try and see, we don't do it every day because, you got to help manage the pitcher's arms, and we don't want to tear up our pitchers, and you got to be conscious of their health, but just as many timing environments as we can. Not training environments, yes, right, you try and make it difficult and stuff, but we want them to be able to, like, where timing is not, it doesn't matter what it is. If it's an arm, if it's a machine, if it's if we scoot them up, we scoot them back. It just, everything is kind of varied, so that way you have a clear understanding of how your body moves, and then what you got to do when pitch is coming to you. So we do a lot of that in different situations, scenarios.
Oh, wonderful. Well, you've given me a lot to chew on today, and so I've got a couple of quick hitters, and then we'll let you off the hook. But
Yeah.
man, JT, this has been a lot of fun, and there's so much that translates from baseball to softball and softball to baseball that I think that you would be one to be able to speak to that. But I mean, have you seen the same thing?
I Yeah, and that's the thing too, is just we baseball and softball are, some people say, hey, they are the same, or whatever, but I think softball is unique in the sense that it's a completely different sport, completely different. And I think once you change some of the rules, it changes like the way that you play the game. And it speaks to NFL, it speaks to NBA, like all those different sports. But with the fact of the field being condensed, the pitching distance being condensed, the motion being different, like everything is different. So I think that while there are aspects that we can take from baseball, and that's the big thing is, I don't know how much baseball is taking from softball, but I know we take a lot from baseball because they're very similar, but we don't do like well, because baseball does this, we got to do this. And just because I feel like it's just different. And it's trying to see what it is that we can take. And so like for example, one thing is like with the crow hop, we see a ton of people in the outfield who come up, get a ball, and then they force that crow hop motion, right? Old JUCO in and outs, it was the higher your crow hop was, the harder you're going to throw the ball.
100%.
Or the double play turns where second base throws it, gives a little hop. And like at the time I was like, man, that's so cool. But now I'm like, okay, that doesn't work for softball. So, the thing is, like, if we have a runner at second, base hit, center field, and we know that they're going to crow hop, it's an easy send because you just don't have the same amount of time. So there's things that you can take, and a lot of it's from the hitting side. A lot of it, glove work, a lot of those like fundamental skills. But I think what's so cool about softball is it's a completely different sport that has a lot different challenges in this, the speed of how you, not like velocity speed, but like the timing speed of, a good time down, a fast time down the line is under 3, whereas in baseball is what was it,
4.5.
under 4, right?
Yeah.
So if you're like under 4, you're elite speed, right? Like MLB plus, like 80 speed, right?
Sure. Yeah, 100%.
And I don't know what, like, I totally forget, but like pop times are different. So now it's with the catchers, some things that are different. But yeah, my whole point is just that the game is completely different, and it's just utilizing what would work and what wouldn't work, or leaving out the stuff that doesn't work, and really trying to take a lot of movement stuff or hitting stuff or throwing stuff that works for us.
Sure. Great comments. Well, with what you're learning too, you've talked about, obviously you're a learner because, you've dropped some different resources, with as far as that goes, but I'd love to hear what you are starting to dig into. You've had a little bit of time to decompress and you're going to be getting started probably before you know it, but taking this time to really dig into anything new that's gotten you really excited.
Um, I, man, I'll tell you, I just haven't. Like last year, we had all the time in the world to kind of sit
Hmm.
down and dig into that stuff, and I felt like kind of the stuff that we dug into was so good. The book by Fergus Connolly, I think his name was, Game Changers,
Hmm. Really
was a
good.
literal game changer, and it's a textbook, so it's quite the read, and it takes a lot. It's more of like a team sport approach where you talk about soccer and football and basketball and rugby and these different approaches on these team sports, but they go over everything. And we took a lot of good things from that, but that book was really really good. But it's kind of intimidating to
Oh,
get
100.
through
Yeah.
that. So you got to know the areas that you're going through, and you can. It's kind of like it's not the Bible, but it's like the Bible where you can pick it up and find something and read it. That's something that you didn't read before, and be like, oh, that's a good point, or that's
Hmm.
but yeah, I like that book a ton for sure.
Oh, I love it. Well, we'll end with this one too because I want to steal even more stuff from you, because why not? But what is a drill that your players like? So you said that you've got such a competitive team environment and lots of competitive girls. But what, like, you show up tomorrow, you guys have a team practice, and you say you're doing this drill or this team set or you're doing this type of thing. What would they get really excited about?
Playing a scrimmage. I,
Wonderful.
I one of the things that we try and set up as many competitive environments as we can. So, like, we'll split up into two teams. Like, it's just easy one is like split up into two teams, and each hitter is going to have, let's say, a machine's on the mound. Each hitter is going to have an opportunity with score a runner at third, less than 2 outs. It's a seventh inning. Who's going to win the game? So it's you just tally up. Okay, you get a point if you walk. You get a point if you get on first. You get a point if the run scores. Defense gets doesn't get any points, right? So it's just like you got to make the play. You got to sacrifice when you got to do your thing. So then you just tally them up at the end. Winner picks up the field. Loser doesn't do anything. Or sorry, winner doesn't do anything. Loser picks up the field, or just some different kind of mini games like that. So just the competitive piece. I don't have like a favorite drill. I know the competitive piece is what I personally like the most.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, JT, I appreciate your time, man, and we've got a lot to go through. I'm gonna have to listen to this again just to really to dig in more. But I'll put your Twitter account online, and in case anyone wants to reach out for any questions or anything. But I did want to let you leave the guest with anything that you'd like. So, is there anything else that you'd like to tell them before you go?
Man, I I don't I don't know. It's I think a big piece, a bigger piece that we kind of dove into was just the overall pressures that I think athletes or young players go through nowadays. It's way more the stuff that they have access to or that they are kind of dealing with is way more than stuff that, even I had to deal with or that we had to deal with when we were in college, high school over, isn't it weird to think it was 15 years ago? It's that's crazy. But
Yes, it
I
is.
think as the times change, at least what we're finding too is the pressures on these kids are changing a ton. And if we keep pushing them and not, and I think there is a time that athletes do need to get pushed. But I also think too that we as coaches need to be very aware of what is going on in their life, and just understanding that, when they show up to the field and something's not working right, there might be a giant like mountain of issues that they deal with off the field. And a lot of it too, you're seeing with social media, and a lot of that got opened my eyes with some of those documentaries, Social Dilemma, and I think there was one on influencers and what it's just brutal. And I feel so, I feel for these players. And also one thing that we are trying to do is kind of give them our players like a life outside of softball. Because I mean, they only play, at least in our world, you want to be the best that you can be, but what we see a lot of is a lot of athletes get pushed beyond what they want. Like if a player wants it and they're going to go and go and go and go and go and push and push, okay, that's great. But a lot of players, they just want to play. They don't really want that. So I think, I don't want to make it seem like, hey, let's just be soft on them. But I think a lot of it is understanding today's athlete and just knowing like everything that that we've gone through, and as millennials, and know they're Gen Z, just it's so different from there. But as each generation past that, it's just completely different than anything that we've been used to. So if I were to leave anything, it's just being mindful of today's athlete, the pressures that they're dealing with, and just kind of making this about playing the game, making it fun, and still pushing athletes to places that you can still push them to places they want to go while being mindful of all that other stuff.